As a human race, we were pushed down a road that we didn't choose, a road that our ancestors didn't necessarily choose for us. Here in America today is Thanksgiving. So it's like, I'm thankful, right? I'm thankful for a lot of things in my life. But at the same time, Thanksgiving was kind of, a fucked holiday, right? Because the Europeans take over the land for the natives, and basically have them cook them dinner. I mean, you could say it was the first time they sat down together and whatever, but like, realistically, why did they sit down together, right? And I just think the human race has lost touch with why it practices its customs. Why do we practice Thanksgiving? What originally started it? Why do we practice Halloween, Easter, Christmas, all of these holidays? Why do we do these things? Why do humans have money? Why do we have jobs? Why is the world structured the way it is, right? We've lost touch with how these things have came to be. We've lost, religions. We've kind of lost touch with how we came about believing what we believe. We believe what we believe because our parents believed it, and their parents believe it because their parents believe it, and their parents believed it because their parents' parents believed it, but I feel like we just lose touch with why we are the way we are as a whole. As an individual, we do as well. I mean, I feel like as an individual, we also kind of lose touch with why we are who we are. We forget the fact that everything we know was taught to us. And if you haven't gone inside of yourself and cleaned out some of yourself, or analyzed why you know what you know or why you believe what you believe, then you probably are walking around randomly believing things that were just taught to you. And that's because our past kind of molds us into the people we are until we decide to mold ourselves into what we want to be. And I just think that the way the world has, set us up is it's like the Europeans came over to the natives' land and they took it over and they forced their way. Long before that, the Roman Catholic Church started taking over. They took over Athens. They took over all these different places in Europe and in history. The Crusades happened. The Christians killed millions of people just to, force Christianity down everyone's throat. And I feel like we forget this. We forget that because of that, we forget that the Opium War was literally about opium, the drug opium, which is where morphine and codeine comes from. And it's like, and in return, it's technically where heroin and everyone, all those other opioid analogs come from. But my thing is, it's like, I think we forget that the Opium War was literally about trading, tea for drugs. We forget that tea is a drug. Just because caffeine doesn't have a psychoactive high or euphoric, feel good, doesn't mean it's not a drug, because I could stay up all night with just coffee. Just like you could with any other stimulant, except minus the euphoria. But, we forget that tea was traded for opium. Well, basically what happened was, the English was starting to run low on silver because they were trading, they just wanted tea. And so they decided to instead try to get some opium and sell it to the Chinese, right? And then that started the Opium War because the Chinese didn't want opium sold in, to China. But the English said, I don't give a fuck, and the English sold it anyway. So the English basically illegally was selling drugs to China. And we forget the history of human beings. We forget, I mean, go so far back that you reach the Sumerians, and you start to understand that the history of human beings has been altered. We're taught certain things in school and certain things we're not. We're taught about Thomas Edison, but not Nikola Tesla. We're taught about, it's like there's a lot of fuck ups in our human history because we tend to not inform. Religions inform us on what they believe in God. So many people believe the Christian religion. They believe like Jesus and Mother Mary and all that. And I'm not saying I don't believe in Jesus. I believe Jesus was here. I don't think he was any different than me or you, though. I think he was a human being that most likely did psychedelics of some sort, psychoactive substances of some sort, and connected with God in that way, right? Because the anointment oil is a drug. All those herb oils contain molecules, psychoactive molecules that, interact with, it's just, you could research this shit. The anointment oil, you could research manna, you could research, in the Quran it has Syrian root seeds. Syrian root seeds are still used as an incense today. It's like, and all these plants that are used are highly psychoactive and spiritual plants, right? And I believe it's for a purpose. Amanita muscaria mushroom, all these things, like, you could just see. Basically, if you're someone who uses these things, you can see. The mushroom, if you use psilocybin mushrooms, you can see it's like almost every church looks like it was designed by somebody who was tripping. And I don't know. I think the human history has been altered, and humans nowadays, it's hard to get people to believe because they've been lied to for so long and they've been told a lie their whole entire life, right? Like, people think psychedelics are the devil when really they're where all religion came from. The ideas that religions have, where did they come from? These stories, these things, these visions that people had. It's like you can have visions in dreams, you can have visions from psychedelic substances. It's because our brain contains DMT, so that's why sometimes dreams can be spiritual, shamanic in a way. But sometimes dreams are just dreams. You can starve yourself, fast. There's many ways to have spiritual experiences, but what I'm saying is, yeah, the human history has been altered. Today is, Thanksgiving. We've changed the history a little bit to make it so it's a more positive thing, but it probably wasn't as positive as we think, right? It's sad because the natives, when the Spaniards came over and mixed with the natives, they basically erased the native history, and now all native Spaniards just claim Spanish. They don't claim native, and they know nothing about their native history, but they know a lot about their Spanish history. And it's the same thing with, Africans. I don't know one African that generally knows, or African American, that generally knows what part of Africa their ancestors came from. We just know that we were ripped from Africa. We don't know which part. Nigeria, South Africa, Northern, Western, Egypt, who the fuck knows, right? Because our ancestors were forced to forget their history as well. Forced to forget the foods they like, forced to forget the religion that they have, the practices that they do, the actual African history. So it's like we just, I feel like, forget where we come from, and we need to be reminded where we come from. That's why I'm glad there's this whole thing with MDMA, getting legalized for psychoactive therapy. I'm glad there's psilocybin and psychedelics are starting to become decriminalized. Cannabis is now decriminalized in New York and everywhere, like in so many other places it's legalized and decriminalized, and now the view on cannabis is changing. And if the view on cannabis can change, my guess is the view on psilocybin mushrooms can change as well, and the view on psychedelics can change, because 20, 30 years ago, if you asked somebody if you should legalize cannabis, most people would say no. the numbers are much different nowadays because more people are getting informed about this, and the more informed people get on psychedelics, and the more informed of a society we will be. When the society isn't just forcing alcohol down our throat, when they allow us to use other things, you'll watch the society change. If our society was, instead of, like at bars, right, when people go to a bar, if people drank psychedelic mushroom tea instead of, like, if they served psychedelics instead of serving alcohol, psychedelics like mushrooms, you would watch our society change drastically. We'd be in a world that was connected to Mother Nature, yet advanced with technology and science, But we're getting there, slowly but surely. But I just think humans could be so much more, and we could be so much farther if some things didn't get in the way of making us forget our history, making us forget why we celebrate what we celebrate, why we believe what we believe, why. Because if all I'm asking is get all the information out there and choose what you want to believe. If you want to still believe in the Christian religion after you figure out how it came to be, and after you figure out what else is out there, then I feel like then that's fine. But also figure out that there's, shamanism. There's figure out what ethnicity you are, and figure out your ancestors and what they practiced. I just think it's up to us, right? It's up to us because it's not our fault that they made us forget. It's not our fault that they don't teach us. But as adults, it's up to us to learn. Figure out who you are. It's up to us to figure out what we want to believe. Don't believe just what your parents told you. Don't believe just what you learned as a kid. Question it. Question everything you believe and ask yourself, do I still want to believe this? Research, learn other things. Learn, because, learn enough about the world where you can figure your place in it. Learn enough about the world where you can figure out your place in it.